What's the haps? I'm Meroka, and today I'm going to be taking a quick look at Spoiler Alert by Megafuzz, and published by tinyBuild Games, who have got a track record of producing some slightly odd titles. They've done No Time to Explain, and the currently in development speedrunners, so some slightly unusual stuff, and Spoiler Alert definitely fits that bill. This is a fairly generic 2D platformer thing. Run, collect coins, jump on things' heads, pick up power-ups. We have this chilly man leaning against a tree as our main protagonist, and he's going to be running and jumping on things. The twist is that the game has already been beaten for us when we pick it up, which is kind of unfortunate. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at the end of the game and play it in reverse. We're going to play backwards through the game to find out what has happened. So it's kind of an unusual one, as I say. We have a look in the options menu. We have a 1024 by 768 window, and we have a full screen checkbox to make it full screen and fit your monitor. That's as good as you get for resolution. Tooltips can be turned on and off, and audio can be muted, but there is no such slider or anything. All you can do is turn it off. So options menu weak, very, very weak, unfortunately. So let's head on into the game. I've had an issue with this. I should have all this unlocked. I beat the game once. It took about 45 minutes playthrough from start to finish. It's not a terribly long one. So I have beaten the entire game, but when I came to do my review today, much of the content, because, well, in fact all of the content was locked to me. It said start at the beginning again. Everything had the little padlock on it, and the only thing I could do was start at the beginning. So I've been through, I've re-unlocked things. It was perhaps unnecessary, but hey, there we go, I've unlocked some of the stuff again. So level 30 at the end of World 3 is where we begin our game at the end, and we will work backwards through these rows to get back to the start. So level 30 is just kind of a tutorial type thing to showing us things. So we'll start at level 29. So we've got these coins to collect, and we need to uncollect them because they've been collected on the first run through. And we have enemies to jump on because this one has already been jumped on, so we need to unkill it by jumping on them. So press A to jump, and that's about it. So, next level. We have these coins. These coins were not collected before, so I need to avoid them. If I pick them up, we cause a time paradox. So any coins that have not been collected when the game has been played through the first time need to be not collected the second time through, and any that have been collected need to be uncollected. The same goes for enemies. If you jump on an enemy's head that hasn't been killed, as we see, there's one here. No, wait, if I could hit the guy. What about that one? Nope. No, I did that one okay. Let's try and actually land on the little bugger. There we go. Yeah, time paradox, because you weren't supposed to kill him. He was not killed on the first run through, so you're not supposed to kill him the second time going backwards either. So that's the thing. So it requires you to think a little bit differently about how you play the game. There's a handful of different enemies that need to be tackled in different ways, but mostly speaking, just jumping on their heads, really. So you need to pay attention to what you're doing. Occasionally, it's quite easy to forget kind of how things are working. You're like, oh, I'll just go for that coin. You're like, no, I didn't need to go for the coin because, I don't know, years of conditioning to play games, I guess, kind of take over. And you're like, oh, I'll jump for the coin. You're like, no, not in this game. In this game, you don't jump for the coin. This game requires you to think differently about things. There was a secret there that I didn't snag. I shall redo this level to snag it. Press right bumper on the pad to grab that again. I imagine it would work on a keyboard. I'm playing it on a pad. I don't suppose it makes much difference. There is very little control in this game. There are, occasionally you'll get power-ups which you'll bump into soon, which are commanded with the right trigger and, I don't know, something on the keyboard. And A is jump. I'm not controlling this guy running, by the way. This guy automatically runs backwards at a constant speed through the level, which is interesting when you consider that at the end of each level, as we see here, it gives us a time and it scores us on our best time. So if we beat that time, it'll say, yay, best time. But I don't know how you could beat that when you move at the exact same speed the whole dang time. There's very little scope for improvement on any of that, to be quite honest. So it's a bit weird. So I think there should be a power-up. Yeah, coming up here. Revive lost powers. So I have this dragon head thing. So if you think how power-ups work in Mario, something like a fire flower. You collect the fire flower, you run around, you use your powers, then you take a hit from an enemy, or in this case land in a spike trap. And you lose your power, but you don't die. You sacrifice the power to save your life, essentially. And that's exactly how this is going to work. So the way that we pick up the power-up is by jumping onto the points that killed us in the game. So if I jump onto my corpse there of the power-up, I'll gain the power-up and we can play with the power-up for a bit. So we'll land in there, he gains the power-up, and now we'll carry on running backwards. So now we have a dragon head which lets us shoot fireballs, which means we need to use our only other control in the game, right trigger, to catch the fireball. So if you press the right trigger at the right time, there's no animation for that, or, well, I think there is an animation, but it doesn't always seem to play, which is a little bit weird, but there you go. So, sometimes, no, oh yeah, he does sometimes animate, which, that's a little bit finicky, that one. It seems like that should work better. It's fairly easy. I mean, I just kind of mash the trigger at the right time, and if you get, at least if you hit the button at least once in the right time, it'll kind of count. It's a bit, like I say, it's a bit finicky. Sometimes it just says, no, you didn't press that at the right time, but at the other times, it's kind of rather forgiving. Like I say, if you just mash the trigger a bit, it'll eventually go, oh yeah, you caught it, sure, why not? So, the power-ups are a little bit strange in their performance, but there you go. This is more, I think, in its entirety as a game, it seems more like an interesting thought experiment than any kind of particularly compelling gameplay. Because, quite frankly, the gameplay, well, there isn't much of it. It's all been done for you. All you can do is press the buttons at the right time, because you're just going through the motions. All the motions have been done in the first instance. There we go, we picked up the power up, so we lost it, so from now on we're going back to jumping on things. So there's nothing to do insofar as it's all been done, so all we can do is press the buttons at the right time. So it's just like a rhythm game at that point, except without the cues. It's a rhythm game where you have to sort of use what's around you in the world to infer what button you're supposed to press at the right time, rather than the game just saying, this is exactly the moment you need to press this. It's a more liberal, wishy-washy kind of way of handling rhythm, I suppose, in that regard. This is a mechanic I'm fairly sure only appears once in the game. If you hit the arrows, it'll change the direction the guy runs. Which is weird when you consider that he wouldn't actually be running that way in the first place. Because he would run towards that arrow. I suppose he would... Actually, no. No, I suppose that would work. So this is just interesting to think about as a game, I think. That was a... Whoops. Let's try and get this right. That's a tricky jump. There we go. I don't know what's going on with that beaver there. Again, weird evil beaver with red eyes. He only appears once as well. Who knows? It's kind of... Yeah, it's... Because there's no compelling gameplay, and it's incredibly short. It's just an interesting thought experiment to think about how things work, when you'll quite often stop, and I've redone plenty of levels, just to go, hang on, what just happened there? Let me just stop and think about this level and try and figure out the sequence of events going the right way in my mind. I mean, the rain going up there in this level is quite nice as well. There's a lot of attention to detail. Actually, they have put a lot of thought into getting the mechanics, you know, exactly right in this, to be honest. They put a lot of thought into how, you know, events play out backwards. I mean, a great comparison I'd like to make is for fans of Red Dwarf, the old British sitcom. There was an episode of that way back when in which time ran backwards, and a lot their causality and whatnot in that was pretty weak. Actually, they weren't so great at that. There was a lot just wrong, but it was just an interesting episode to think about. You just kind of go, well, hang on, if that happened first, then that happened first, then that happened first, then you sort of sit and think about it and reverse the events in your mind. It's fun to think about, I think is what it is, for the most part. As I said, the gameplay is a lot of this, and it's just press the button at the right time, and in many regards does not deviate much from what would otherwise... Why was that a paradox? It doesn't deviate from what would otherwise just be pretty much just a rhythm game. Oh, he needed to use the mushroom to get up onto the platform, I guess, is probably what happened there. Yeah. See what I mean? It's just kind of like, wait, why do I need to jump on the mushroom? Why could he not jump on the platform? I guess the mushroom was needed to give him the height that he used to get up onto the platform, which is why that's there. So, as I say, fun to think about, but maybe not a great deal else. So soon, I'm not sure what level are we on. Hard to say. I think we're nearly at the end. I would like to show you a boss fight. There will be a boss fight coming up soon. I suppose I could just pause the game, go into the menu, but I think we're very nearly at the end of World 3 now, so we can go. I can show you the boss fight at the end of World 2 because it's the start of World 2, because time is flowing backwards. So of course you would do the boss fight at the start of the level and work your way backwards. And of course the game does not end on a boss fight, because why would it? We do get our power-up back here, so that's a bit weird. That one kind of was a bit disjointed, insofar as you sort of seem to warp a bit there when you fired that fireball. I don't know. Either way, there we go. Pick the power-up, and there we go. Cool. For some reason, you get power-up right at the start of World 3, so okay. let's head back to World 2. It doesn't, for some reason it throws you out of the world and makes you go back to menu between worlds. It doesn't just carry straight on with the boss as you'd expect it to, but there you go. So World 2 boss, we have the big bad squid, which we will kill by jumping on it a bunch of times, because how else would you do a boss fight? The big bad squid's going to... I don't know, how is he going to work? I guess he kind of lands and... I don't know, it's one of those ones that it's like, why is he on the ground? I don't quite get why he's on the ground. You have to sort of follow events. I guess he tries to land on us. You have to try and follow events backwards to figure out why we have that opportunity to attack. The opportunities just seem to be there for, like, no reason. There is a life system for the bosses, which is about the only time you can really lose your life, and it doesn't just straight up call it a time paradox. But as you see, it's fairly trivial to do the bosses. It's still just going through the motion. Even though it's a boss fight, it's still just press the button at the right time. So the lives don't really play into it to any great extent. So there we go, perfect. Deaths and time paradoxes. That's the only time deaths actually counts for anything. Any other time you die, it's a time paradox, because quite frankly, for that to actually play out, normally you would be basically coming to life from a spike or something, which makes no sense. So, yeah. So then we got a different world. This one is an icy world full of penguins, and I shouldn't have jumped on his head, because I'm not thinking backwards. I'm not thinking of time flowing backwards. So there's a few different enemies in this one. I think soon there'll be like some flying enemies, which you have to handle a little bit differently. They might appear soon. You jump on them and then they explode, and then you need to quickly react and jump on them again because they were a flying enemy. So I'm hoping I can find one of those to show you. This should be... Is he one? No? Okay. There's a few different mechanics, but for the most part, it really doesn't mix things up too much. It still boils down to press the right button at the right time. There's like I say, there's little slight timing issues, but it still doesn't really differentiate it. Damn it. It still doesn't differentiate it from a rhythm game to any great extent. There you go. It's still just press the button at the right time. There we go. Ah, damn it! After all that. I don't think this is happening. Nah. Let's leave it there. The soundtrack's kind of cool, because it sounds like it's flowing backwards, but it's actually not. I mean, I've tried opening the tracks in Audacity and playing it backwards just to see if it was, and nah, the song actually genuinely sounds backwards when you do it that way. It's just very cleverly written, so the songs kind of sound like it's a track being played in reverse, which is just a very clever design, to be honest. So this is out today. It is launching on Steam. With apparently, according to the website, plans for iOS, Android and others in the future in no particular order. This was made in Game Maker, so I believe porting it should be a fairly simple process, I think. I don't know that much about game design, but I think Game Maker's a fairly straightforward one for porting to other stuff. So if you're hoping to see this on something else other than Steam, it should be coming to those at some point in the future. As I say, in no particular order. But if you want to go check this out, this is out today on Steam, and there will be a link in the description below. So I have been Meroka, this has been a spoiler alert, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.